market activation policy, predicting it will unlock a market potential between $736 million and $2.5 billion by 2030. The permanent secretary of the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Nura Rimi, made this known at the Corporate Climate Action event on carbon markets during the 79th ONGA going on in New York. According to the permanent secretary, NCMPA aims to generate 600,000 jobs to 2.3 million green jobs for youths, unlock a carbon market potential of $736 million to $2.5 billion by 2030, and foster sustainable development across Nigeria and the African continent. Mr. Rimi emphasized that NCMAP was a transformative initiative that would establish a robust carbon market, provide a structured environment for local and foreign investment, and stimulate growth. According to the secretary, the country, under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu, aims to reposition itself as a leader in addressing climate-related challenges. And moving on now, the Naira broke a 3-day losing rate on Thursday as it appreciated across foreign exchange markets following increased dollar liquidity. Data from the FMDQ Securities Exchange Limited shows that at the end of trading on Thursday, Naira gained 5.8% as the dollar quoted at 1,576 Naira 10 kobo compared to 1,667 Naira 42 kobo quoted on Wednesday at the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market. Dollars supplied by willing buyer and willing sellers increased significantly by 232.49% to $334.05 million on Thursday from $100.47 million recorded on Wednesday. The Central Bank of Nigeria is said to have sold some $60 million to banks towards the close of trading on Thursday. The Apex Bank also said sold dollars to Bureau de change operators at the rate of 1,590 Naira per dollar in a move aimed at boosting liquidity in the foreign exchange market. The 30th Nigerian Economic Summit is a landmark event that will convene regional and global leaders from government, business, civil society, social sector, and the academia. The summit aims to address the current trajectory of our regional and global economy and emphasizes the need for collaborative action to tackle pressing challenges under the theme Collaborative Action for Growth, Competitiveness and Stability. The summit will catalyze discussions and aimed at mobilizing leaders to address pressing economic realities. The focus will be help to navigate the uncertainties and turbulence and foster an environment that encourages innovation and diversification and sustainable development. But let's get talking about the head of this event and, of course, some other burning economic issues. I have live in the studio Dr. Olusegun Omishakin. He is the Director of Research and also the Chief Economist at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Thank you so much. It is good to see you, Dr. Omishakin. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, I know a lot of work will be going on now ahead of the conference, but let's talk about that theme that you guys decided to choose this year, considering what we face as a country. Why that theme? What do you intend to achieve with it?
Yeah, I think the emphasis is the we've been on this journey for a long time. I'm talking about the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. We've been on the side of providing evidence, providing policy advice, and so many other assistance in different ways for the current government. We've been doing it for the past 30 years. And so it's been a long time. What have we learned from this? First thing we've learned is that the emphasis on the collaboration between the private and the public sector is still very, very important. Secondly, we also think that there is a lot for Nigeria to learn from the regional and the global experiences. We've had countries that have gone through what we are going through now. What can we learn from them? So this summit is not just going to be a usual local-focused summit. We're going to learn, even though we are focusing on our domestic issues, we're going to learn from experiences from other regional actors, regional governments, and the global stakeholders. How do we navigate through these current challenges? We've had challenges from the side of growth, the side of competitiveness, and also stability. So we're looking at these three main economic issues together in a way to make sure that we have 2025 that is far better than what we've experienced so far, especially in 2024.
And so clearly we know that we face a challenge as an economy, and it's a fallout from reforms instituted by government that many analysts have said is the way to go. So now, managing this fallout is something that is very important, Dr. Mishakin. How would you assess how government is trying to manage the fallout, or what do you think is the right way to manage the fallout of this policy formulations by government?
Yeah, it's difficult to tell, and I will let you know. We are currently in a state where the economy is not stable. The macroeconomic indicators, as you have rightly said now, you could see some of them. So the point that we need to know is that first, timing is very important when it comes to policy implementation. We should also take note of the issue of trade-offs. So when government introduces any policy intervention, the idea is not just to make sure that we solve all the problem at a time, but to isolate maybe some fundamental challenges or problems that the government could have identified, and then say, let's tackle this one. So I think personally that the intervention so far from the side of the government in terms of the policy efficiency, well, they are quite interesting, but I think the need for us to make sure that we make it more robust is important. As in, we've been having a series of interventions from the monetary side of the economy. We are yet to see such a decisive action from the fiscal side. Recently, we've seen how the CBN increased the MPR rate, beyond what we had before. We now have 27.5,
yes.
0.2. That in itself is interesting because we can all see the impact on inflation rate. But the question we also need to ask ourselves is that to what extent, how long will this continue without the collaborative effort from the fiscal side? What are we seeing concerning our capacity to increase revenue? What are we seeing concerning our capacity to influence the economy more, to inflate the economy more, to make sure that we have more liquidity from that side that will complement what the CBN and other financial institutions are doing? But again, having average of 3% growth rate in the first half of the year, and with the projection of staying on that territory, maybe 3.2, 3.3 at the end of the year, I think we are yet to see the impactful side of the policies that the government has been introducing. But again, it's hard to tell. We'll see what goes on at the end of the year. We'll see how our exchange rate will be stabilized. We've been seeing some gains now. We'll see how our government will be able to, of course, increase our federal allocation in terms of the revenues. We'll see how this will also be shared by states and see the efficiency all through. But it's a tough time, and that's why it's important for us to talk from the perspective of what do we do for growth, what do we do for competitiveness, and how do we make sure that we achieve stability. And these factors are so important in navigating the system out of the current situation that we find ourselves.
Let's now look at the kind of people you're expecting now, personalities you're expecting in Abuja for this conference. It's not just going to be government, the private sector. Give us a highlight or area of guests we should expect.
So more or less this summit can be termed like a global summit. Of course, we've been having the summits with the global presence, but this time around is going to be different. The presence is not just going to be people that will be there physically. We have people who will be joining us online. We have the international institutions, the World Bank, IMF, principal office holders who are part of this. We also have different governments and stakeholders from the rest of the world. We have people from Africa, different leaders from Africa. We have business leaders from Africa and from the world coming. And we have, of course, our home people from within the country. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the dynamics within the Nigerian economy can be also projected within what is happening within the West African countries, the African countries, and then the global space. It's going to be very interesting debates as to how or what are the approaches that we can adopt now in terms of how do we move forward in terms of growth. As you know, Tulu, we have there are three classes of growth contributors in the current state. We have those sectors that are contributing to growth potential,
yes,
but they are more or less what we call growth drivers. They are growing beyond 5%, and there are just 4 sectors. We have recently oil and gas, we have finance, and some other sectors in that category. We also have sectors that are dragging, the current growth pace, and we have them in huge numbers. There are sectors that are not growing beyond 5%. Most of them are even growing within 1 to 1%, below the population growth rate. And we have sectors that are actually, pulling the growth back, and these are sectors that are growing below 0%. They are currently in recession. So the contributions to growth from those sectors that are dragging and those sectors that are just there growing below 5%, say about 68% of the GDP. So the question now is to say, how do we make these sectors to be more competitive? How do we unlock the capacity of these sectors to help us in achieving the current stability that we desire, at least in the medium term? So the conversation around growth, competitiveness, and stability will be around unlocking the potentials of this sector. So it's going to be a great time. We hope that at the end of the day, the recommendations, the insight from this summit will inform the government as to the way to go out of these current challenges that we are passing through, we are facing.
Let's look at communiques that you've heard before now and resolutions at the previous NESG meetings and forum summits like this one. At least I know I've attended series of them, and there are strong communiques that come up from it. You see the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, Ministry of Finance involved in wrapping up this document. What happens afterwards?
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, I really like to ask that question.
Yeah,
afterwards?
Yeah, our model is not. Our model is that we say the truth, we fight for the truth, but we don't lose focus of what next to do after that. So we don't just say, "Oh, government do this," and then we just go. In most cases, we also help out with government in making sure that we improve government's capacity to implement some of these policies. Apart from the summit, we've done a lot of advocacies around growth, competitiveness, and stability. We've met one-on-one. We've always been doing that with different ministries. One of the cases is that of the CBN. We've had series of meetings with the CBN, tendering what the position of the private sector is, and then hearing from the CBN regarding to some of these policies. We've seen some of these policies change instantly, and we've seen some that we are still, kind of pressing the government to look into. But above all, governance is not as simple as that, and especially in advocacy, we are still pushing forward to make sure that we achieve the dream that we all have concerning this nation. And that is why we're having this conversation come next month during the summit. So it's going to be open. The president will be there, the ministers will be there, international stakeholders will be there, the private sector organizations and different private sector groups will also be there. So it's going to be a great time for us to tell the truth and then sincerely look at the way forward.
Well, it seems that it's going to be a very, very interesting time in Abuja. But let's wrap up with issues around innovation and diversification. That's finally on this segment today. We've been talking so much about diversification in Nigeria, but many will tell you that, are we really diversified? Have we diversified? Some say, yes, our portfolio has been diversified in a way. You can explain to us better, please. Where are we with regards to diversification?
Diversification within what context?
Talking about non-oil, looking away from oil and, exploring other avenues. Are we doing so very well in that space?
Yeah, I think, as you said, it's a very, it's not that easy to say whether we've been able to achieve diversification or not. But the point is, we ask ourselves this simple question. What's the essence of diversification? What do we want to achieve? In other words, diversification in itself, it's not just what you go after and say, okay, now we have diversified. To achieve what? If the diversification essence is to say we are achieving increased growth rates.
Yes.
If the essence is to say we are making sure that all the sectors in the economy are contributing massively towards the same goal, then I don't think we have. So it's not just about making sure that different sectors are growing, as it were. It's also making sure that these different sectors are growing at a rate that is so encouraging. I mean, for instance, we've had different, even within, let's look at agri sector. We have crop production that contributes more or less 90% of the activities in that sector. That in itself is not being inclusive. Yeah. So we need to even diversify within agri, not just oil and non-oil. But for me, I think the overall purpose of diversification is to make sure that we have a well-structured economic system that can withstand external shocks, internal shocks, and that can grow at a pace that is so strong, not just something below 3 or 3, at least something beyond 5 and 6. We've been there before. We can still be there. We can still do bigger than that. And that's why the conversation is very important. So we are looking at growth, we are looking at transformation, we are looking at competitiveness, and how we can make sure that all these things are done within the space of stability.
Feel free to tell Nigerians more about that conference and what's happening on the 14th to 16th, right?
Yes, yes.
Feel free, please tell Nigerians.
Yeah, so this time is special because we're not just looking at what happens to us within us. We are looking at what is happening to us within the context of the global and the regional economies. We're having people who will be able to bring on board some of the challenges they faced and how they could, we could also learn from them. We're also having the president on seat learning from other business leaders and country leaders who will be able to say, okay, we've been in this situation, this is how we can exchange notes. And above all, this is the 30th, so it's going to be beyond purposeful policy recommendation. It's also going to be very ceremonial, because this is like celebrating what the NESG has been doing so far. The question is, you can ask, okay, we've been talking all this while, but we've not seen things. But the point is, if we stop talking, imagine where we'll be today. Worse. So that's why, for us, we are celebrating it, because we also believe that this country will change, and the advocacy will continue.
I must thank you so much for your time. Dr. Olusegun Nshakin is the Director of Research of Economics, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. I'll see you in Abuja.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, then. Well, let's take a break. Coming up on the show, we'll be looking at the role of information security experts in reducing cyber attacks. Information security analyst, Mr. Adeniji Omole,